News Central now at this hour begins in Nigeria, where President Bola Tinubu is set to depart Abuja for Accra, Ghana on Saturday, July 20. He will attend the 6th mid-year coordination meeting of the African Union, Regional Economic Communities, Regional Mechanisms, and AU member states. This meeting will be held under the AU's 2024 theme, tagged Educate and Skill Africa for the 21st Century. In his role as chairman of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government, Tinubu will address the gathering on the status of regional integration across Africa. He is expected to highlight achievements and challenges faced in West Africa since the previous meeting in Nairobi, Kenya in July 2023. Tinubu will also present the 2024 report on ECOWAS, covering key areas such as peace, regional security, governance, economic integration, humanitarian and social development, as well as energy, mining, and agriculture. Away from that, let's head to the Senate, where the Senator Ali Ndume, the ousted chief whip of the 10th National Assembly, has declined an offer from the APC to serve as chairman of the Senate Committee on Tourism. In a briefing with journalists at his Maiduguri residence, Ndume explained that after reviewing the circumstances surrounding his removal, he believes his actions did not justify his dismissal. News Central's Umaru Kirwa has the rest of the report, something that we'll bring to you in our subsequent bulletins.
I wish to state this, that I reviewed several times from beginning to the end the interview I granted. I also shared the interview I granted to friends, elders, leaders in this country to review and get back to me to tell me whether I have said anything that is not true or that is wrong in that interview. And unanimously, the people I shared with, and my conviction too, tells me that I did not do anything wrong. I did not say anything wrong. And therefore, I want to state that I stand by all my statements in the interview I granted. Not interested in accepting the Committee on Tourism for the two reasons I told you. I'm inexperienced in that. I'm not, I don't know anything. I'm not knowledgeable about tourism. So I would, if any, prefer to remain as an ordinary member so that I can learn about tourism and something like that.
And now to labor matters. The National Assembly is set to receive an executive bill on the new national minimum wage on Tuesday, following an agreement between President Bola Tinubu and labor leaders for higher worker remuneration. This is according to the special advisor to the President, Bola Tinubu, on information and strategy, Bayo Onanuga, who confirmed that the lawmakers will receive the executive bill on the new minimum wage by Tuesday to ensure the agreement is legally binding and ready for implementation. And now to discuss this, we are joined by a labor law expert, Irioluwa Oguntuwashi. Thank you so much, Mr. Oguntuwashi, for joining us on the news.
Yes, thank you for having me.
So we know that inflation is about 34.19%. Food inflation is 40.87%. If the minimum wage is 70,000 naira, what then is the living wage? And is that even a win for Nigerian workers and a dignified reward for their labor?
My brother, I don't think we should be talking of living wage, because we all understand the fact that when we talk of living wage, we're talking of the amount that should be paid for workers, you know, to feed well, to be productive, the amount that workers need to collect so that they can be comfortable. And it should be difficult for any country to pay the living wage, especially a country like Nigeria, in which, you know, we have galloping inflation. Inflation is at the high heavens now. All types of inflation, food inflation, there is, in fact, health inflation, there is tariff electricity tariff now and all the likes. Food surge, prices of food are surged. So to that extent, if we look at all that, it is not possible for the government to pay the living wage. On the contrary, on the alternative rather, what the government should rather do is to ensure that all the parameters that have created an upsurge, in the prices of food, in the price of services, electricity hike, everything, should go down, at least to a very great extent, such that the citizens, the workers can afford it. I'd always known that it would be very difficult for minimum wage to assuage, the sufferings the workers are facing at the moment. And this is actually playing out. But beyond that, we've already known that government cannot pay living wage and the minimum wage cannot assuage. So beyond that, let's be looking at what the government should be looking at. What can they do in order to make life better for the Nigerians? And when I'm talking of the government, I'm not leaving it at the doorstep of the federal government alone. I'm also extending the tentacles of responsibility to even the subnational government as well, because they're also part of the federating unit. Okay. So all hands must be on deck to ensure that this hyperinflation, the rate of hyperinflation is stepped down. Else, the minimum wage would only do nothing but inflict more poverty on Nigerians.
All right, we'll still look at what needs to be done, but then let's do a bit of comparison. Ivory Coast's minimum wage is about $125, Togo, $85, Benin Republic, $86, Kenya, that is going through a rough patch now, $116, Morocco, $286, South Africa, $249, Seychelles, $464 minimum wage in these African countries. And when you do the comparison to 70,000 naira, that's just between $42, $43, $44. Now, we have rising inflation in the country. What is it that these other African countries are doing differently that is making it seem as though they're able to meet up with the minimum wage in their country, or in these countries that Nigeria seem not to be able to measure up to?
Very simple, without mincing words. They've prevented wastages to a very great extent, because I've looked at this country, the way this country is run, and we will know that there are a lot of wastages, there are a lot of corruption. We are not sincere with ourselves. The government will not come out to tell us the way things are. So if we compare these countries with our country, we will know that seemingly they seem to be running their government better. And at the same time, I've talked about leakages, I've talked about corruption. At the same time, we also seem not to be paying proper attention to this, the enforcement in the sense of it. And if I may give an example, we are just witnessing a case of an ex-governor, that is running from arraignment as a result of the charge that is being preferred against him. Nobody is being made an example. Nobody is being made an example. The people that are supposed to be responsible on the face of it, they are not being responsible. So we cannot compare other countries with our own countries. I would rather say that we should focus on the challenges that we're facing as a country and try as much as possible to fix up that challenges before we can now start talking about measuring up with other countries. Apparently, there are things that these countries are doing better that we are not doing. And at the same time, especially for the subnational government, there seems to be the apron strings of the federal government, because what they have been saying over time, even when the minimum wage when 60 or 62,000 is being negotiated for the minimum wage, is that they cannot meet up with it. Now the minimum wage is 70,000. I know that what they want to do is to quickly run to the federal government and be seeking for, soft loans, be seeking for things, in that category, incentives in that category. But if we look at it, I believe that the subnational government can also stand on their own, can generate resources on their own, and should also be able to pay this minimum wage on their own, especially if we all reduce wastage in this country.
All right, but I understand that, but most of these states' governments are still struggling to even pay 30,000 naira. Some are not even paying at all. But then let's look at it this way, because you actually said a lot needs to be done if we are going to be able to sustain this payment and increase the value of workers' or Nigerians in the country. Now, a colleague of mine said increasing the minimum wage is not even the solution. Instead, the government should bring down the fuel cost, improve on security so that farmers can go back to the farm. You talked about electricity costs, that should also reduce. Otherwise, even private sectors and private businesses won't even be able to cope because they are also complaining about the cost of production. Now, because we can keep talking about this, but the implementation is the problem. How do we go about implementing all these variables or all these probable solutions so that we will be able to solve the perennial problems and improve on the value of Nigerians and businesses alongside?
I think the most important thing at this level is, on one hand, for the government to recognize that we have these challenges, and on the other hand, for them to direct effort towards solving these challenges. Now, without that, I don't think any effort can be solved. And if we look at it, with all due respect, I don't think the government is serious enough in tackling all these issues that you've mentioned. Yes, I agree with you. You know, all these things are, all these issues and all these probable solutions that you've mentioned are things that the government needs to tackle. But if we also look at it, the issue of minimum wage is a creation of law. And the law has already provided for the period of time in which minimum wage should be reviewed. So a responsible government will know that it is not only minimum wage that can resolve or solve the problem. A responsible government will know that in addition to also fixing minimum wage, because even if you look at it, the minimum wage issue, you know, is an issue of best practice. There is an ILO convention, you know, fixing minimum wage convention, you know, which is actually Convention 131, 1970. So this convention has been in existence since 1970, and Nigeria is a member of ILO. So whether we like it or not, you know, the issue of minimum wage is an issue that has been domesticated, you know, into our laws as a result of this convention. So minimum wage is on one hand. The responsibility of the government to prevent, you know, high upsurge in goods and services is on the other hand. So government has a responsibility to do the two and not pay lip service, you know, to the welfare of the citizens, as it were. But for me, and in my humble opinion, has government been able to successfully do what will ensure that citizens has better welfare? For me, I don't think so. And this is the reason we find ourselves in this problem.
All right. Thank you so much, Reluwa Oguntowashi, a labor law expert, for sharing your thoughts with us on the news. We appreciate that.
Yes, thank you for having me. Thank you.
Still talking about this, Nigeria's federal minimum wage has been increased to 70,000 naira per month, although it still needs to be submitted to the National Assembly and signed into law. The government has given its approval for the new minimum wage, along with the commitments to review the national minimum wage law every 3 years. This increase is long overdue, as the previous minimum wage of 30,000 naira expired by law in March. Organized labor, including the president of the NLC, Joe Ajaero, has expressed satisfaction with the decision. A guest on News Central's Market Pulse, David Olujimi, a financial markets analyst with Nairametrics, shared his thoughts on this development, including the rejection of a proposal by the president to pay a minimum wage of 250,000 naira, while we saw an increase in the pump price of petrol.
It was never sustainable in the real sense of it. So if we have a situation where we have a 250,000 minimum wage, we have to consider the inflationary push of this amount of money flowing in circulation. This is the part where CBN will now say, oh, there's a lot of money supply in society, and this is one of the reasons why inflation is at this level. 250,000 versus 70,000. It's not a trade-off in the sense. 70,000 seems more sustainable. However, there's something I was saying. I was saying something earlier today. I was talking about the fact that I feel like the government should have made this move from the beginning, from the get-go, when we had all these things, subsidy cuts, naira devaluation that were pushing inflation. Now we're at 34% inflation level. Now you're just increasing the minimum wage of a society. It's almost complementary. Minimum wage increases come with a certain level of hike in inflation because of increase in money supply. But now, I hope to see what will go on. The society is already used to what we've had. The country is already used to a situation where things have skyrocketed and people are just trying at all means to survive. But now we have a situation where money is going to come more into the hands of people. Are we going to see increase in the prices of goods and services? We never know.
Away from minimum wage stories to security matters now, the multinational joint task force said it has witnessed a substantial surrender of 263 Boko Haram terrorists and their families in the Sector 1, Cameroon, from July 10 to 17, 2024. A statement signed by the Chief Military Public Information Officer, Headquarters, MNJTF in N'Djamena, Chad, Lieutenant Colonel Abubakar Abdullahi on Friday said a wave of surrender started on July 11, 2024, when 5 terrorists surrendered to MNJTF troops in Wulgo, Nigeria-Cameroon border. Preliminary information indicated these individuals hailed from Tumbuma and Kutumgula in Mate local government area of Nigeria. According to the statement, preliminary investigation also revealed that all the surrendered individuals are Nigerians. Many thanks for being there. Let's talk education now. The leadership of the Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics in Zone B has cautioned on the implementation of the new scheme of service by the head of service of the Federation through the National Board for Technical Education. The zonal coordinator, Zone B, Simji Lumpie, on Friday said the union observed that the responsibility for drafting the scheme of service and its approval should not be the sole responsibility of the head of service, but should include other stakeholders, especially Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics. Other issues raised include the rejection in totality of the dichotomy in a graduate assistant entry point into the Polytechnic as a lecturer, as well as preference given to bachelor's degree over higher national diploma certificate for appointment of registrars and bursars, which is described as biased and discriminatory. Let's now give you an update on the situation in Benin, the capital of Edo State, where what would have been an entirely joyous event turned bloody. 2 persons were reported to have been shot dead during the reception for the Deputy Governor of the state, Philip Shaibu, who was earlier this week reinstated by the court. Large crowd of supporters had gathered at the Benin airport to receive Shaibu and the APC governorship candidate, Senator Monday Okpebolo. Reports say the gathering was attacked by armed thugs who fired gunshots leading to the death of police personnel and another supporter of the deputy governor. Available video shows the crowd processing on the streets with a lifeless body in the van. Edo State will be voting in a very heated governorship election on November 21 after the deputy governor had failed to emerge as candidate. Police say investigations have commenced into the circumstances surrounding the shooting and killing on Thursday. Earlier, a legal practitioner, Dennis Osaratin, spoke to us on this development.
I saw on the very international, on some very reputable platforms, where the essay to the governor on media, project and communications came out clearly to condemn such acts and called the authority, the police, the DSS, to swing into action and bring those who were seen in the video chanting war songs and threatening fire and brimstone, to bring them to justice. The only information that I have seen from some other reputable news observation is that a serving police officer was gunned down by the thugs that was mobilized by the former deputy governor of Edo State. That should be the news. It's very condemnable. Why should a policeman be harmed, be hacked down in such a manner by these banned, bloodthirsty thugs? So we should be able to place blame where it is. The person who mobilized those people to the airport should be the one to be called to answer these questions. So anybody who have been killed is quite unfortunate, but I don't also think we should be missing words in calling out those who were at the forefront of bringing those thugs to from the airports.
Away from that, we tell you that the governor of Imo State, Senator Hope Uzodinma, has delivered a public lecture titled "Where Are the Nigerians?" a discourse on patriotism and citizenship, speaking in front of other governors, top traditional monarchs, and many other notable guests. Uzodinma drew from different surveys conducted and arrived at the conclusion that though Nigerians could be seen as patriotic, the government needs to do more for the people if it expects the people to do more for it. News Central's Bernard Akede filed in this report from the lecture.
Senator Hope Uzodinma the governor of Imo State, accompanied by his Lagos State counterpart, Babajide Sanwo-Olu. His task here was to speak on patriotism. Setting the premise for the lecture, the Imo State governor first acknowledged the president's decision to revert to Nigeria's former national anthem, stating that the verses speak of patriotism.
The issue of patriotism among citizens is currently on the front burner of conversations on how countries can overcome their challenges and attain greatness. This may have informed the decision of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu GCFR, who recently urged the Ministry of Information and National Orientation to find ways to raise the feelings of patriotism among Nigerians.
Basing his statements on the results drawn from various statistical data analyzing a sample of Nigerians, Uzodinma explained that it was worrisome to know that not many Nigerians were willing to go to war for or die for the country.
We administered an online survey, and a total of 1,670 people of different ages and levels of education responded. That is noticed for those who are willing to go to war for Nigeria. Of the sample population, 64% of the respondents said they will not be prepared to go to war for Nigeria. Only 36% are ready to do so. This implies that many Nigerian citizens, more than half the population, are not willing to die for their country.
With practical examples that the audience could relate to, the governor was able to show that Nigeria does not seem to create a level playing field for citizens, thus making patriotism a difficult ask. He urged the government to show more concern for the citizens if it wanted the citizens to be more patriotic.
We need to create enough space for everyone to thrive, and this should emphasize merit. Herein comes the need to take another look at our federal project, which in my view is currently skewed. We need to create sufficient space for all tribes and tongues in the land to thrive without impeding the speed or space of order. This is why the need to rejig our federal project may be inevitable. If we do, we would have gone a long way in addressing the root of the palpable despair of a good number of our people who have lost confidence.
While Governor Uzodinma's lecture could unanimously be likened to a doctorate thesis, the expectations will be that his recommendations are implemented so as to foster patriotism. In Lagos for News Central, I'm Bernard Akede.
To health matters now, the Nigerian government has signed a memorandum of understanding with the Global Gases Group to establish gas plants for the production of liquefied medical oxygen in the country. Nigeria's Minister of Health and Social Welfare, Professor Ali Pate, made this known in Abuja, saying the MOU aims at ensuring a steady and reliable supply of high-quality medical oxygen to hospitals in the country. He adds that the first phase of the planned facility will be located in 3 urban clusters in the northern and southern regions and will have the capacity to produce at least 100 tons per day to be accessible to the broader population. Pate says the partnership is a game changer for Nigeria and the West African sub-region as it aligns with the nation's health sector renewal investment initiative. The Chief Executive Officer of Vaccine Alliance, Gavi, Dr. Sania Nishta, has disclosed that cholera vaccines would soon arrive in Nigeria to help curb the deadly and ongoing disease outbreak. Nishta announced this on her X handle. Earlier, she stated that the body was concerned about the cholera outbreak in Nigeria and was ready to support the country in its response, including requesting emergency vaccine doses where needed. Cholera, a highly contagious food and waterborne disease, is caused by the ingestion of the organism Vibrio cholerae in contaminated water and food. The primary cause has been linked to the consumption of contaminated water and inadequate sanitation, exacerbated by the onset of the rainy season, which often leads to increased cholera cases due to flooding and compromised water sources. When I'll tell you that electronic waste describes discarded electrical or electronic devices, and it is a major waste that people usually don't talk about. But Lagos State is taking steps to put it far ahead of other states in Nigeria and countries in sub-Saharan Africa in terms of the management of electronic waste and converting them to wealth. News Central's correspondent Bettina Ibeli tells us more in this report.
A city thriving with technological advancements and a growing population faces a huge challenge in handling electronic waste or e-waste. E-waste is one of the fastest growing waste streams in the world, and Lagos is no exception, as discarded electronics can pose serious environmental and health risks if not managed properly.
For us as a state to handle our waste. But if you handle your waste positively, you are fixing the global ecosystem as well as the environment. And municipal waste is key. Electronic waste is key. We're not talking about it. But it's an integral part of the waste system. And I'm glad we did a lot of projects with Netherlands. Harvest waste is taking up a major leg of it for us. That's waste to energy. And now, closing the loop, I've come forward to say
the Lagos State government, through the Ministry of the Environment and Water Resources, is taking a gigantic step in managing the vast deposits of electronic waste in the state with the signing of letter of intent with a company from the Netherlands for the establishment of a smelter plant in Lagos. This initiative is important in improving e-waste management in line with international best practices and the economy of the state.
So, signing this letter of intent is also a positive step for us as a state to handle our waste. But if you handle your waste positively, you are fixing the global ecosystem as well as the environment. And municipal waste is key. Electronic waste is key. We're not talking about it. But it's an integral part of the waste system. And I'm glad we did a lot of projects with Netherlands. Harvest waste is taking up a major leg of it for us. That's waste to energy. And now, closing the loop, I've come forward to say we shall take up the electronic waste and convert them to waste.
The improper management can affect the environment badly. Lagos generates 13,000 tons of waste daily. 1/3 of the waste will now be converted to waste to wealth. Another 1/3 goes to waste to value, while the last part is converted to waste to energy.
I strongly believe that the government and the agencies in charge, they are going to be buckled up and make sure that they tidy up the street. Don't allow the street to be, littered with waste. And then now, even the waste is now, they talk about the issue of waste to wet now. So there are so many benefits that they can derive. The only thing is that when we have resources enough to transform what we are taking as waste even to wealth.
Recycling e-waste not only helps to conserve energy, but it also recycles natural resources like copper, silver, and aluminium. Many of the metals used in our gadgets are rare earth metals that are in limited supply. When they are recycled, they can be reused instead of having to mine.
We now take you to the east of the continent, where Kenya's embattled President William Ruto on Friday named a partial new cabinet as part of a process of forming a broad-based government. This comes after a month of widespread and sometimes deadly protests against his administration. In a televised address, Ruto unveiled the names of 11 proposed ministers after last week sacking almost his entire cabinet as he seeks to contain the worst crisis of his nearly two-year presidency. The names for cabinet ministers and the Attorney General will go before Parliament for approval. However, several of those nominated were members of the previous government, including Kithure Kindiki at the head of the Interior Ministry, which is in charge of Kenya's under-fire police force.
For the past 1 month, Kenya's credentials as a democratic nation have been severely tested. During this time, the country has engaged in a difficult public conversation, providing an opportunity to reflect deeply on the relationship between fundamental rights and democratic freedoms, our collective aspirations for prosperity, and efforts to secure opportunities for all, and the imperative to advance national sovereignty and the security of the state. I have started the process of forming a new broad-based cabinet to assist in driving the urgently needed and irreversible transformation of our country. I am continuing to undertake consultations across the political divide on the balance of cabinet that I will appoint shortly. The consultations are at an advanced stage, and internal processes in various sectors are underway to facilitate my appointment of the balance of this cabinet.
Up north, a Tunisian court on Friday sentenced our presidential candidate Lutfi Mrahi to 8 months in prison and banned him from contesting elections for life. This is the latest move to stifle opponents of President Kais Saied in the upcoming October election, which critics call a sham. The court found Mrahi guilty of vote buying during the 2019 election, adding him to the list of government critics prosecuted for alleged wrongdoing in the contest. The charge is the latest to face Mrahi, the 65-year-old president of the Republican People's Union, a nationalist opposition party. He also faces money laundering charges, which he denies. Mrahi's lawyer, Umaru Ben Ismail, said he planned to appeal Friday's verdict, which will give Mrahi an opening to remain a presidential candidate and challenge Saied. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa committed his new coalition government to growth, job creation and poverty reduction as he opened parliament following the first elections in which his ruling ANC lost its absolute majority. Addressing a joint sitting of the two houses of parliament after a grand opening ceremony, Ramaphosa also listed tackling the high cost of living and cutting red tape among his administration's goals. He also promised business-friendly reforms such as an overhaul of the draft reading public service and to massively increase investment in infrastructure.
We are committed to improve the well-being of our country and its people through inclusive growth, the creation of jobs, and the reduction of poverty. The Government of National Unity has resolved to dedicate the next 5 years to actions that will advance, firstly, to drive inclusive growth and job creation. Secondly, to reduce poverty and tackle the high cost of living. And thirdly, to build a capable, ethical, and developmental state.
Still in the region, the Namibian government has denied a request to extend the visa for Ugandan King Mutebi II, who has been receiving medical treatment in Namibia since April. King Mutebi of Buganda has been undergoing treatment for an undisclosed condition. Earlier this month, the medical center where he is staying requested an extension of his visa. However, the International Relations Ministry responded that Namibian immigration law permits a maximum stay of only 90 days per year for foreign nationals. The decision comes amid rumors of the king's alleged abduction, which have led to protests that have endangered Namibian diplomatic staff abroad. This also follows recent reports of Namibian authorities' dissatisfaction with protests by Ugandan activists at Namibian diplomatic missions. Away from the African continent, we tell you that British Foreign Office Minister Annalise Dodds says the new UK government has decided to resume funding for the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees. The government, according to Dodds, has committed to providing £21 million in new funds. Although the UN agency oversees nearly all aid delivery in Gaza, it has been facing financial difficulties since international donors withdrew money in January over allegations made by Israel that certain employees were complicit in the war starting October 7 attack by Hamas. Dodds added that the UN agency is the only organization that can deliver aid at the scale that is needed given the humanitarian need in Gaza.
Only organization that can deliver aid at the scale that's needed given the humanitarian need in Gaza. We'd followed the Kelowna independent review very carefully, and we were assured that action is being taken in response to that review, and we did decide today that we would resume that very much needed funding. Well, clearly, any country's decision in relation to the provision of funding for UNRWA is a decision for that nation. We were clear as an incoming government that it really was important we resumed funding to UNRWA, and the UK today has made clear that we will be providing £21 million in support. That's going to be directly supporting food and shelter for 3 million people who are in need. So this government takes the rule of law very seriously indeed. Of course, we are looking carefully into these matters. We're seeking advice on them, and we will ensure, above all, that Parliament is updated.
We also tell you that the World Health Organization on Friday confirmed that no case of polio has been detected in the Gaza Strip after the virus was found in sewage samples. Sewage now flows between the tents used by tens of thousands of displaced people across the besieged Palestinian territory. On Tuesday, WHO spokesman Christian Lindmeier said the Global Polio Laboratory Network isolated vaccine-derived poliovirus type 2 in 6 environmental surveillance samples collected on June 23. The Israeli Health Ministry also said it had made similar findings, most often spread through sewage and contaminated water. Poliovirus is highly infectious and can cause deformities and paralysis.
16 July, the Global Polio Laboratory Network isolated the variant poliovirus type 2 in 6 environmental surveillance samples collected on 23 June from Khan Yunis and Deir al-Balah. It's important to note that the virus has been isolated from the environment only at this time, and there's no associated paralytic case or any cases that have been detected. The decimation of the health system, lack of security, access obstruction, constant population displacement, cramped living conditions, shortages of medical supplies, poor quality of water and weakened sanitation, as also just described by the colleagues, are decreasing routine immunization rates and increasing the risk of vaccine-preventable diseases, including polio.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has addressed the UK's new cabinet. Zelensky is the first official visitor to Downing Street since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister on July 5, and also the first foreign leader to address the cabinet in person since US President Bill Clinton in 1997. He briefed the ministers on the situation in Ukraine and the need to expand Europe's defense industrial base, as well as agreeing to a £3.5 billion defense export finance deal with Starmer.
It goes without saying that it's unforgivable. It's very symbolic, really, and very important for me, for all Ukrainians, that we have such strong support and trust of the United Kingdom. And this is the first meeting of the British cabinet of this kind. Thank you so much. I truly hope that this beginning of the new British government's work will open up more shared opportunities for us, Ukraine and the UK. Mr. Prime Minister, I want to praise the energy with which you have started the work of the new government. And yesterday we already had a very productive meeting. Thank you so much with the defense industries, secretaries of defense and trade were there. And the meeting was really substantive. And I hope we will now work even more actively, truly, when making changes. It's important not to lose.
Talking business now, the Nigerian government says the importation of refined petroleum products into Nigeria is going to continue alongside the production of the commodities by the Dangote Petroleum Refinery to prevent monopoly and ensure energy security. The government warned against being over-dependent on the $20 billion refinery located in the Lekki Free Zone in Lagos, stressing that the demand by the refinery that all oil marketers should buy products from the plant does not support competition. This came as the House of Representatives constituted an ad hoc committee to probe allegations of non-supply of crude oil to the Dangote refinery as oil marketers condemned the international oil companies operating in Nigeria for not supplying crude to indigenous refiners. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission insisted that it was doing a lot to ensure the supply of crude to Dangote refinery and other modular refinery operators as it vowed to resolve the lingering crisis. In sports, Nigerian Premier League football winner Kalu Nweke has been signed by Enyimba International. Nweke was one of the key players that helped Enugu Rangers to the title in the 2023-2024 season. The skillful midfielder has been training with the People's Elephants for a few days and a 2-year deal has been agreed. Nweke is expected to play a significant role for the two-time African champions in the new NPFL season as well as the CAF Confederations Cup. We also tell you that Finnish heavyweight boxer Robert Helenius has been hit with a 2-year boxing ban by UK anti-doping agency UKAD after failing a drug test following his fight with Anthony Joshua. Helenius tested positive for the banned substance clomiphene after the heavyweight bout at London's O2 Arena in August last year. The 40-year-old was knocked out by British fighter Joshua in the 7th round. Helenius denied taking performance-enhancing drugs and, according to UKAD, said the detection of clomiphene in his urine sample originated from the consumption of contaminated eggs and chicken. However, a statement from UKAD stated that Helenius was unable to provide any evidence that the eggs and chicken he had consumed in advance of the bout originated from hens that had been administered clomiphene. Finally, Cesc Fabregas has been appointed as head coach of Italian side Como after leading them to promotion to Serie A as assistant and interim coach last season. Former Arsenal, Barcelona and Chelsea midfielder Fabregas ended his playing career in Como in 2023 and became an assistant coach at the club. He took over as interim coach after head coach Marino Longo was fired. Como rose from 7th to 3rd in Serie B under Fabregas before Welshman Ocean Roberts was appointed as interim coach in December, with Fabregas remaining as his assistant. Como secured automatic promotion after finishing 2nd in the league. Roberts will now take over as Como's head of development, the club said in a statement. And that's all at this hour, but before we go, we'll take a look at some of our top stories again. President Bola Tinubu to attend meeting in Accra, Ghana. Senator Ndume urges President Tinubu to reevaluate policies. We also told you that Tunisian President hopeful Imrahi gets jail sentence, life ban. Don't forget to send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number and email on your screen, or you can follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. Do watch us live on DSTV channel 422, StarTimes channel 274, Alvo TV and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Lekan Onabanjo.